Emma had always felt like a shadow in her own home, not because anyone deliberately overlooked her, but because she blended into the background like a familiar piece of furniture or the unchanging view outside the window. Her older brother, Ethan, was the shining star around whom the entire family orbited. With his good looks, charm, and apparent success, at least in the eyes of their parents, Victoria and Nicholas, he could do no wrong. Every little accomplishment of his, no matter how trivial, was met with a chorus of admiration and praise. Emma, on the other hand, no matter how hard she tried, remained eclipsed by his brilliance. She excelled in school, but her achievements were taken for granted, as if they were expected. Ethan, however, would earn glowing compliments for merely passing with a C, lauded for his effort over a backyard barbecue of burgers and hot dogs. When Emma graduated from college with honors, her parents offered a curt congratulations before swiftly turning the conversation to Ethan's latest win at a company bowling league. At her job, Emma poured her heart into her work, diligently contributing to the family's finances, yet her efforts were seen as nothing more than her duty, unworthy of thanks. Meanwhile, Ethan hopped from job to job, each transition cushioned by Victoria and Nicholas's unwavering emotional and financial support, his setbacks casually blamed on jealous coworkers. Emma didn't resent her brother, not really. All she yearned for was for her hard work to be acknowledged, for her voice to carry weight, for someone to truly see her. But as the years passed, it became painfully clear that this would never happen. In their household, an unspoken rule reigned. Ethan was the golden child, the hero, while Emma was the quiet worker bee, destined to support his endless victories. After college, Emma landed a job as a programmer at a small tech firm. The work was repetitive and uninspiring, but it provided a steady paycheck. Unlike Ethan, who chased creative gigs with little accountability, often seen sipping craft beer at trendy bars, Emma was frugal to a fault. She denied herself new clothes, the latest smartphones, even a weekend getaway to the coast, saving every penny for a dream she'd nurtured since childhood. That dream took root when she first laid eyes on an old, crumbling estate on the outskirts of town. A grand, dilapidated mansion with towering columns and a sprawling, overgrown yard that seemed straight out of a storybook. In her mind, she saw herself restoring it, breathing new life into its walls, turning it into a haven of laughter and warmth, perhaps hosting summer cookouts with apple pie and lemonade on the porch. Over the years, the estate fell further into disrepair, but Emma's vision never wavered. She meticulously saved her money, pored over books on architecture and interior design, and researched everything she could about historical restoration. Finally, the day arrived when she could make her dream a reality. A few years back, the estate went up for sale, and Emma seized the opportunity without a second thought. She finalized the purchase in her name, but kept it a secret from her family, knowing full well that Victoria and Nicholas would dismiss her plan as a reckless whim. Ethan, she suspected, would just chuckle at her little project over a casual brunch of pancakes and bacon, teasing her with a playful, "Hey sis, you building a castle now?" So she stayed quiet. Right after signing the papers, Emma reached out to James Michael, a longtime family friend and seasoned property manager. James, a man of few words but unwavering reliability, had known about Emma's dream for years and didn't hesitate to offer his assistance. Together, they crafted a detailed plan to restore the estate, tackling the monumental task step by careful step. The process was slow, often frustrating. There were days when contractors bickered over petty delays, much like neighbors squabbling over parking spots, but progress was steady, and Emma felt a quiet pride with each small victory. Emma had poured every penny of her savings into the project, dedicating every spare moment to overseeing the renovation of the old estate. To ensure the property didn't sit idle, James Michael suggested renting it out for events like weddings, birthday celebrations, and corporate gatherings. At first, Emma hesitated, unsure if she wanted strangers traipsing through her cherished space, but eventually she gave in. The income from these rentals was funneled back into restoring and maintaining the estate, breathing new life into its crumbling walls. And so, Emma led a double life. By day, she was an unassuming software developer, blending into the sea of cubicles at her office job. But come evening and weekends, she transformed into the proud owner of a stunning estate that was slowly but surely becoming a gem of elegance and charm. None of her family had the slightest inkling about her secret ownership. To them, she remained the quiet, unremarkable sibling, and Emma was in no rush to correct their assumptions. There was a certain thrill in keeping this part of her life hidden, a quiet strength in knowing she was building something extraordinary on her own terms. She was aware, though, that the day would come when she'd have to lay her cards on the table, and that day was creeping closer. Ethan and Marina, unaware of who truly owned the venue, booked the estate for their wedding through a local event planner. Emma stumbled upon this detail by chance while reviewing paperwork that James Michael had dropped off for her signature. The agency's name, the date, and the couple's names, it all clicked into place. Her heart skipped a beat, but she kept her composure, curious to see how things would unfold. Soon after, a formal invitation arrived in the mail. It was a crisp white envelope with elegant handwritten lettering. Inside, a luxurious card on embossed paper awaited. Emma couldn't help but smirk at the formality of it all. They hadn't even bothered to call or stop by with a personal invite. Just mailed it like it was some generic gala rather than her own brother's wedding. The day finally came when Victoria, Emma's and Ethan's mother, showed up at her modest apartment. Her face was tight with tension, her eyes scanning the room with a critical glint, as if judging the mismatched furniture and the half-eaten sandwich on the counter from last night's dinner. Emma offered her a cup of tea, maybe even a slice of apple pie she'd picked up from the local diner, but Victoria waved it off impatiently. "We need to talk, hun," she said, perching stiffly on the edge of the couch as if ready to bolt. "Ethan's wedding. It's a big deal for the family. You know that, right?" Emma nodded, fully aware that her mother's definition of big deal revolved around appearances and impressing the neighbors rather than any genuine family bonding. "We're aiming for everything to be just perfect," Victoria went on, choosing her words with care, as if rehearsing a speech. "And, well, sweetheart, you know how it is with you." Emma waited patiently, already anticipating the twist in this conversation. "Look, so, basically," Victoria finally blurted out, "we think it's best if you don't come." Emma raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise, though deep down she'd braced herself for something like this. "Not come to Ethan's wedding? Why's that?" she asked, her tone calm but pointed. Victoria fidgeted, avoiding her daughter's gaze, her fingers nervously twisting the handle of her purse. "Well, you know, with the photos, the guests, you tend to fade into the background a bit. Don't take it personally, sweetie. But you get it. Marina's got a certain vision for the day. She's very particular about the whole aesthetic. And honestly, you're not really into big, loud events anyway, are you? You'd probably be happier just chilling at home with a good book or something." Emma stared at her mother in silence, searching for even a hint of empathy in her eyes. But all she saw was a desperate need to maintain the perfect Instagram-worthy wedding image. "So, what you're saying," Emma said slowly, her voice laced with quiet disbelief, "is that I'd ruin the vibe just by showing up?" Victoria's face flushed a deep red, her discomfort palpable as she stumbled over her words. No, that's not exactly what I meant. Trust me, you'll be much happier staying home. We'll send you plenty of pictures, and even bring back a slice of cake. You won't miss a thing." Emma turned her face toward the window, trying to hide the tears welling up in her eyes. Once again, she felt pushed aside, made to feel invisible and irrelevant, and once again, she had let it happen. But this time, things would be different. "All right, Mom," she murmured softly, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. I'll stay home. Victoria let out a sigh of relief. That's wonderful, sweetheart. You've always been so understanding. We really appreciate how sensible you are. She gave a quick goodbye and hurried off, confident that everything was settled. Emma was left alone, staring out at the dreary autumn landscape beyond the glass. A storm of anger, hurt, and frustration churned inside her chest. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, fueling a burning resolve. Enough was enough. She wouldn't let them walk all over her anymore. She'd show them exactly what she was made of. The next morning, Emma headed to work as usual. Her job was mundane and uninspiring, but it paid the bills and allowed her to save up for the restoration of the old estate. During her lunch break, while grabbing a turkey sandwich and a soda from the corner deli, a typical quick bite for a busy day, she stopped by the bank to cancel a planned transfer of $10,000 meant for wedding expenses. Those funds were supposed to cover the estate costs and other small details, but she knew Ethan and Marina were counting on her help, as they always did. This time, though, they'd have to manage without her. After that, she dialed James Michael. "Hey, James, it's Emma." "Hello, Emma. Is something wrong?" he replied in his usual clipped tone. "Yes, James, I need to meet with you urgently." True to form, James was concise and punctual, arriving at her office within the hour. Emma poured out the details of her conversation with her mother and the decision she'd made. "James, I need you to terminate the rental agreement for the estate for Ethan and Marina's wedding." James listened intently, his face betraying neither shock nor judgment. Having known Emma for years, he understood she didn't make snap decisions. "What's the reason?" he asked simply. "Failure to meet payment terms," Emma replied firmly. "They didn't make the deposit on time." James nodded. "Understood, Emma. I'll take care of it. When do you want the agreement canceled?" "The morning of the wedding?" she answered without hesitation. "Let them find out when the guests start rolling in." James gave another curt nod, stood, and headed for the door. "It'll be handled exactly as you wish, Emma." She watched him leave, a flicker of anticipation stirring within her. The day of Ethan and Marina's wedding would be a day of reckoning, a day to show them who she truly was, a day to finally make her voice heard. The wedding morning dawned unusually bright, as if nature itself was smirking at the chaos about to unfold. Emma woke with an odd sense of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Sipping her morning coffee, black, no sugar, just how she liked it after a long week, she gazed out at the quiet yard of her modest home, a stark contrast to the over-the-top grandeur of the estate. Meanwhile, her family was likely in a frenzy of last-minute preparations, probably arguing over trivial things like whether the caterer had enough deviled eggs or if the florist had delivered the right shade of roses. She could almost hear her mother snapping at someone to hurry up while juggling a million tasks. Emma allowed herself a small, bitter smile, knowing the real surprise was yet to come. Marina, draped in a flowing silk robe, darted through the rooms of the grand estate, barking orders at the stylus with the precision of a drill sergeant. Ethan, brimming with self-assurance and a cocky grin, soaked up congratulations from his buddies, slapping them on the back and promising a night of epic revelry with cold beers and a backyard barbecue. Victoria and Nicholas, the anxious parents of the groom, bustled about, double-checking every detail from the flower arrangements to the catered trays of sliders and apple pie. With only a few hours left before the big event, the air was thick with anticipation. Soon, the first guests began to trickle into the sprawling property just outside of town. Elegant ladies in wide-brimmed hats, gentlemen in sharp suits, and kids clutching colorful balloons arrived, eager for a lavish celebration. Yet, instead of a cheerful band playing upbeat tunes or warm smiles from the hosts, they were greeted by James Michael. His stern expression and formal demeanor instantly put everyone on edge. "Good afternoon, folks," he announced to the puzzled crowd in a clipped tone. "I regret to inform you that the wedding event has been canceled by the estate owner's decision." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the gathering. Guests exchanged confused glances, unsure of what to make of this bombshell. Canceled? How can that be? One man protested, his voice rising with irritation. We were invited, for Pete's sake. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience, James Michael replied, his face a mask of professionalism. The organizers failed to meet the terms of the rental agreement, and as a result, the owner has terminated the contract. As James Michael elaborated on the situation, an enraged Ethan stormed over, his face flushed with anger. What the heck is going on here? He bellowed, grabbing James Michael by the sleeve of his jacket. What do you mean, canceled? Who decided this nonsense? James Michael calmly extricated himself from Ethan's grip and met his furious gaze head-on. I'm acting on direct orders from the estate owner, he stated coolly. Any questions should be directed to them. And just who is this owner, darn it? Ethan roared, his temper flaring beyond control. Where are they? Why wasn't I told anything? At that moment, Victoria and Nicholas hurried over, their expressions a mix of bewilderment and frustration. James Michael, what kind of stunt is this? Victoria snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. You know full well today is my son's wedding. I'm truly sorry, Victoria, James Michael responded, unflinching, but I'm only following the owner's instructions. And who exactly is this owner? Nicholas demanded, his fists clenched at his sides. We need to speak with them right now. James Michael said nothing, merely gesturing toward a car pulling up to the estate's gravel driveway. Out stepped Emma. A hush fell over everyone. Ethan, Victoria, and Nicholas stared at her as if she were a ghost from the past. Marina, standing a little ways off, curled her lip in disdain, though a flicker of unease crossed her face. Emma? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible, his eyes wide with shock. What are you doing here? Emma stepped out of the car with deliberate poise and approached the group, her gaze steady and unyielding, showing neither fear nor hesitation, only resolute determination. I'm here because I own this estate, she declared calmly. A deafening silence followed. The guests, momentarily forgetting their own grievances, watched the drama unfold with rapt attention. Ethan, Victoria, and Nicholas stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Marina let out a scornful huff, though her confident facade seemed to waver just slightly. You're the owner? Ethan finally choked out, disbelief etched across his face. That's impossible. Oh, it's very possible, Emma countered, locking eyes with him. I purchased this estate a few years back and have been pouring my heart into restoring it ever since. But where did you even get the money? Victoria exclaimed, her tone a mix of astonishment and suspicion. You're just a software developer. I've been working my tail off day and night, Emma replied with quiet pride, building something from the ground up. Emma had scrimped and saved on every little thing, denying herself even the simplest pleasures, all in the pursuit of making her long-cherished dream a reality. Her father, still grappling with the weight of the revelation, looked at her with furrowed brows and asked, Why on earth did you feel the need to keep this under wraps? Emma's voice was steady, but laced with quiet frustration as she replied, Because I knew you wouldn't get it. You've always seen me as a nobody, someone who couldn't possibly aim for anything grand. You've never missed a chance to sing Ethan's praises, even for the smallest things, while my hard-earned wins were just brushed aside like they didn't matter. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Emma cut him off with a sharp look. Don't even start, Ethan, she said firmly. You've always been the golden child, and I don't hold that against you. But I'm done living in your shadow. I want to be respected and valued for who I am, not for what I can offer or sacrifice. Marina, who had been silently watching the drama unfold from the sidelines, suddenly stormed forward, her face flushed with anger. Just who do you think you are, crashing our wedding like this? She snapped, getting right up in Emma's face. You're just eaten up with jealousy, aren't you? Emma met her gaze with an unshakable calm. "I'm not jealous of you," she said evenly. "All I want is to be left alone. I'm tired of being around people who don't value or respect me." Marina, practically spitting with rage, shouted, "You're going to regret this. You'll see how happy we'll be while you're left all alone, miserable." Emma shrugged, unfazed. "Maybe so," she replied, "but I'd rather be on my own than stuck in a world full of lies and pretense." With that, she turned on her heel and headed toward her car, the crowd of guests parting like the Red Sea to let her through. Ethan, Victoria, and Nicholas stood frozen in the middle of the yard, looking utterly lost and humiliated. Marina, beside herself with fury, stomped her feet and let out a frustrated yell. "Damn it all!" As Emma reached her car, James Michael approached with a slow, approving nod. "You did the right thing," he said in a low, reassuring tone. "It's high time they were put in their place." Emma managed a small, grateful smile. "Thanks, James," she said softly. "I couldn't have done this without your support." She slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the sprawling estate's driveway. In her rearview mirror, she caught glimpses of the disappointed guests dispersing, muttering among themselves as they left the failed celebration behind. Ethan, Victoria, and Nicholas remained rooted to the spot, looking like they'd been hit by a freight train, unsure of their next move. The wedding was ruined, and with it, the carefully constructed illusions that Ethan, Marina, Victoria, and Nicholas had built over the years about who Emma, the supposed wallflower, should be. Shock, anger, and confusion hung heavy in the air, like storm clouds ready to burst into a downpour. The guests, resembling a flock of startled birds, hurried away from the estate, whispering to each other and casting pitying yet judgmental glances at Emma's stunned family. Ethan stood in the center of the yard, looking as if he'd been struck by lightning. His usually polished, smug expression was now twisted with rage and embarrassment. Marina, who had been glowing in her wedding gown just hours earlier, now looked like a faded version of herself. Tears had streaked her makeup into a mess, and her once perfect curls were a tangled disaster from her frantic pacing. Victoria and Nicholas, typically so poised and commanding, clung to each other like lost children, their confidence shattered. They stared at the departing cars and the emptying estate, the full scope of the disaster sinking in with every passing second. James Michael, maintaining his composed demeanor, watched the scene unfold from a distance, his expression unreadable. Earlier, as the tension had brewed, some guests had been awkwardly munching on classic wedding fare like pulled pork sliders and deviled eggs, trying to avoid the brewing family spat, while others whispered over their sweet tea about how Emma had always seemed so quiet, like she'd never pull off something this bold. One aunt even muttered to her husband, "Hey, hun, pass me another biscuit. I'm not sticking around for this soap opera," clearly uncomfortable with the public airing of dirty laundry. The small, everyday interactions, someone offering a half-hearted sorry, buddy to Ethan as they shuffled past, or a cousin rolling their eyes at Marina's theatrics, only underscored the raw, messy reality of the moment, grounding the high drama in the familiar rhythms of a Southern-style family gathering gone wrong. He understood that Emma needed peace and quiet right now to process the emotional storm she had just weathered. He had played his part, and all he could do now was hope she would reap the rewards of her hard-fought victory. Meanwhile, Emma had returned to her quaint little cottage on the outskirts of town, where she sat by the window, watching the last light of day fade into dusk. She felt utterly drained, yet there was a peculiar, unfamiliar strength stirring within her. Yes, she had disrupted her brother's wedding in a dramatic fashion. Yes, she had publicly shamed her parents in front of their friends and neighbors. But hadn't they earned it? Had they ever truly seen her as an individual, rather than a bothersome footnote in their picture-perfect lives? Memories flooded back of years spent in Ethan's shadow, her brother always placed on a pedestal. Every minor success of his was celebrated as if he'd won the lottery. while her relentless hard work went unnoticed, unacknowledged. Ethan, our pride and joy. Her parents would gush over Sunday roast dinners, while she, Emma, was merely the dependable sidekick, the quiet one who fixed problems and smoothed over cracks without so much as a thank you. She thought back to her childhood dreams of owning a charming country home, how she'd scrimped and saved every penny, skipping coffee runs and weekend outings just to make it happen. She remembered the countless late nights hunched over sketches and renovation plans at her small kitchen table, pouring her heart into the project, all while keeping it a secret from her family, knowing they'd never understand or support her ambition. Now, with her dream finally a reality, she had used it as a stepping stone to break free from the weight of her family's expectations. She was fully aware that her actions would spark outrage and judgment, perhaps even gossip at the local diner over plates of apple pie and cups of black coffee. But she could no longer live by their rules. She deserved respect, recognition, and if her family wasn't willing to offer it, she was prepared to cut ties for good. As evening settled over her property, the twilight casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn, a car pulled up to Emma's driveway. Out stepped Victoria and Nicholas, their faces pale and drawn, as if they hadn't slept in days. "Emma, sweetheart," Victoria began, her voice trembling with emotion. "What have you done? You've torn our lives apart." Emma gazed at her mother silently, her eyes reflecting neither anger nor resentment, only a deep weariness. "I've torn your lives apart?" she echoed softly, her tone heavy with exhaustion. "Have you ever stopped to think about how you've been tearing mine apart for years?" Nicholas reached out to take her hand, but she pulled away, stepping back toward the porch. "We've always loved you, Emma," he insisted, his voice cracking. "It's just, Ethan always stood out, you know?" "Stood out?" Emma let out a bitter laugh, crossing her arms. "He just knew how to put on a good show, while I was always there in the background, cleaning up his messes so you could keep singing his praises." "But we're your family, Emma," Victoria pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "We're supposed to stand by each other." "Stand by each other?" Emma repeated, her words sharp with irony. "When was the last time you stood by me? When did you ever ask about my life, my dreams? All I've ever been to you is a convenient tool, not a person." Her parents stood there, heads bowed, the weight of her words sinking in. They knew she was right. They had overlooked her, taken her for granted, used her without a second thought. "We were wrong, Emma," Nicholas muttered, his voice barely audible. "We see that now. Please forgive us." "Forgive you?" Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I'm not sure if I can, but I do know one thing. I won't let you take advantage of me anymore." "But how are we supposed to manage without you, Emma?" Victoria sobbed, clutching her purse tightly. "You've always helped us out, with bills, with everything." "Well, it's time you figured things out on your own," Emma replied firmly, her voice steady despite the pain in her chest. "I'm done being your go-to fixer," Emma declared firmly as she shut the door right in her parents' faces. She was well aware that they'd feel the sting of her decision, but she had endured her own pain for far too long. Now, it was finally her time to live life on her own terms. In the days and weeks that followed, Emma's world transformed in ways she hadn't imagined. She quit her draining job and threw herself wholeheartedly into managing the family estate. With the guidance of James Michael, a seasoned advisor, she crafted a bold new plan for the property, drew in a wave of fresh clients, and turned the estate into a thriving venture. Ethan and Marina reached out repeatedly, pleading for forgiveness and even offering financial help. But Emma stood her ground. She refused to reconnect with those who had belittled and undervalued her for years. Her parents didn't give up easily, though. They called her phone nonstop, showed up unannounced at her doorstep with a homemade apple pie, her old favorite, and flooded her inbox with messages. But Emma wouldn't budge. She didn't answer their calls, didn't open the door, and left their texts unread. She knew that even a sliver of hope would be an invitation for them to exploit her again. Over time, her parents came to terms with the reality that Emma had walked away for good. They realized they hadn't just lost a convenient problem solver, but a devoted daughter and sister. It dawned on them that their narrow-mindedness and selfishness had torn their family apart. Emma, on the other hand, felt a newfound sense of liberation and joy. She was no longer weighed down by others' expectations. She carved her own path, surrounding herself with friends who truly appreciated her for who she was. She traveled to quaint coastal towns, pursued her passions, and savored every second of her reinvented life. The estate became more than just a business to her. It was a powerful emblem of her independence and strength. She poured her heart into it, transforming it into a serene haven where visitors could escape, enjoy the tranquility of nature, and find peace over a warm cup of coffee at the on-site cafe. On quiet evenings, as she watched the sun dip below the horizon over the estate's rolling hills, Emma sometimes thought of her family. She harbored no anger or resentment, only a quiet sadness. It pained her that they couldn't see her as an individual, that their biases had shattered their bond, but she was certain she'd made the right call. She had chosen herself, her freedom, her self-respect, and that was what mattered most. Emma started building her life according to her own rules. She refused to let anyone manipulate her anymore, learned to value herself and her accomplishments, and grew into a strong, self-assured, and independent woman. Whether it was handling a small disagreement with a local supplier over delayed deliveries or sharing a laugh with neighbors at a weekend barbecue, she embraced every moment. This was just the beginning of her new chapter, a life brimming with purpose, love, and the freedom to be unapologetically herself.